All right, welcome everyone to this webinar, Creating Backups and Data Recovering for IoT Applications. As you know, I am Thiago Lima. I am one of the customer success managers here at TagoIO. Today I'm here with Freddie, our software developer, one of our applications developer here at Tago, to bring us some insights on how to export data, import, restore, through a couple different channels, that is natively through the platform, through analysis. And also, we're going to share a live demo on the end so we could capture these details in practice. And if you miss anything, you can feel free to post on the chat, or if you want to have this information carry out on the end, we're also going to enable our Q&A at the end of the presentation. But feel free to present yourselves on the chat, and I hope that everyone have a great session. So first topic will be exporting and importing via the admin. The third one will be exporting and importing via analysis, and then we're going to have our live demo. So we're going to be talking about data management and analytics, right? So many of our customers, they do have their own systems of backup, let's say, right, and backup and restore. As you know, TagoIO today already have a functionality within its device management system in which you can export buckets, that is, export chunks of your bucket, so chunks of your data. You can download it to your computer, save it into files, or analyze that and through analysis very carefully and tailor your results at the end. So we're going to dive into backing the company data, restoring for analytical purpose, and discover these native tools that we have to make our lives simpler and safer, right? So let me jump into the next one. So it's quick and easy, right? Through our device management panel, we have on the right side our exports chunk button. And there we can select carefully each one of the chunks that we want to select for this backup. If we're doing it from here, we're going to receive our backup inside our files module. That is, the chunks that you selected here will be exported there. There's another channel through the tab data. In that case, the system's going to generate a downloadable file for you. And these both doing through the chunks and also using the filters through data, they're both API supported and SDK supported. That is, you can extract data and push data through API, or you can use our SDK to create a custom tailored filter to retrieve that data, maybe apply a queue, and then export that to the right endpoints, right? So then we have exporting and importing via the admin. So this will be, let's say you created a chunk of your files, you backed up your data, so now you have that on your files. You're able then to upload a file to restore your data. That is, imagine I have data from a device from 2019. I want to look at the data. I want to analyze it. So now you're able to restore it back to your admin, create maybe a custom dashboard so you can view and analyze that data carefully. That's why backups are so important, right? Today we have many customers that also have, for example, beta profiles and production profiles. That is, if they do any changes on the beta, they can test it on beta and ensure that everything is 100% before moving to production. So in this case, you are safe for at least most of it, right? But let's say you only have one profile and then you do some modification and end up deleting some things here and there. So we gotta be wary of that, right? So we have these mechanisms here. You don't pay anything additional for using it. Of course, if you're exporting it, you have your output being used from there. But you can analyze it internally. You can restore it from the platform itself. Freddie's going to share a bit more with us so we can analyze how those procedures can be achieved. And again, for those who join later, feel free to present yourselves on the chat, to post your question on the Q&A. We will address the questions right after our presentation. Freddie, you got it. Oh, I think you're on mute, Freddie.
Sorry.
Now we can hear you.
Thanks for letting me know. So thank you, Thiago. So now I'm going to explain to you how we can do exactly what Thiago was mentioning through the native admin console, but through the analysis. So what the native console is basically doing is using the data restore and data backup methods in the second point there. So I'm going to be creating an analysis along with dashboards and the widgets that you need to have inside the dashboard to use the analysis. So you can do that either with mutable devices or immutable devices. And we'll be using an analysis as well, pre-analysis in this case. Next page. Right, so diving a little bit more into the two key functions themselves, we have the data restore method, which will have the params object. Inside of that object, we'll have the device ID and the file address, so where you want to store the data. And also a optional property, which is notification, which is if you want to receive a notification or not when the data is restored, when you create the file itself. And also the data backup method, which takes the same params and the chunk ID if you're using an immutable device. Also, the headers optional property is if you want the CSV file that's created to have the headers on top, which is basically the variable value. So if you want to show that or not inside of the CSV file. Right, so let me share my screen here. All right, so here I want to quickly go over the SDK first. So here are the two methods that you'll need to use. Here we have data backup and data restore if you want to take a closer look at how it works, right? So here are how it's defined, right? So that would be, I'll leave that in the chat here. And okay, so now first I want to show you guys using it natively, so simply through the interface itself, right? So I can come here. I created 3 devices to use an example. So this device here, I've added 3 pieces of data here yesterday. So 15, 30, and 45 for temperature. And I have the next device here, device 2, which has no data inside of it. So if I want to back up device 1 to device 2, I can simply come here to device 1, come here to data, click here on more, and back up 2 files. So then here I can use the file address that it already gives me, which uses the device, then the device ID, and the timestamp here. Or I can add like maybe another folder inside of it. So now it's going to be inside of backup device, and then this, for example, in this case. So now I can click on export. So now I've successfully exported the files. And if I come here to device 2 and come here to data, I can restore from that same file that I've just created, which was from backup, then device. Then this is the ID of the device 1. So if I can click here, then click here on the file that I've just created, hit confirm, and okay. And since it's just 3 variables, it should be very quick. So it should already be here. Yep. So now I've used those two methods, but natively through the interface. So we just did that. So now I have here a dashboard that I've created yesterday to show how you can use this in a dashboard, for example. So here we have 3 widgets. We have 2 input form widgets, which is backup a device and restore a device, and also a list of all the backups we've created. Right. So inside of the input form of the backup device, we have 3 things: backup name, the device we want to back up, and a time interval, as well as the validation field, which lets us know what's happening inside of the analysis. And here, when I click on the backup button, we have the analysis that we're going to be using, which is the backup analysis. And we won't be sending anything else, so just running the analysis. And then the same here for restoring a device, except we have 1 field less, and we're using a different analysis, which is restore analysis. And then finally, we have the dynamic table, which shows the backup name, the device we used to create the backup, the start date and end date, along with the file location, which I can't really see that well. And notice that we can delete the files here. So if you go back, here we have the file location and when it was created on. So, okay. So, and also when we delete a file, a backup, it will run the delete backup analysis, which is in charge of deleting the actual file from your TagoIO files. So, along with the variable itself. But that can be done natively. You don't need an analysis to delete the variables. If you add the delete button here, it'll delete the variables by itself. So let's go to firstly, in order to have these analyses work correctly, you'll need to create a policy for the analysis. So I made it more simple in this case. I've just targeted the 3 analysis and gave them all the permissions that are necessary for everything that I want to do here, which was 4 rules for device and 1 rule for files, which is deleting the file. I gave it access to any file in any path, and I gave it access to all the devices as well. I could use tag, for example, if you want to be super specific and more secure. So keep that in mind. Also, my tags, my devices have to not show all the devices. I've added this. So show and true. This is a tag that has been added to device 1, 2, and 3, just so that when I come here and click on device, it shows these 3 instead of showing all the devices I have. Since that, I thought it would look nicer just for that reason. So now we can go to the analyses. So let's go to the first one here. Lower the console. Right, so here we have the analysis, right, in its regular form, not built or anything. So we have a verification if the analysis was triggered by a widget. So if you come here and click run, it will give you this error since it needs the information that comes from the input form. So we get also some console logs just stating that the analysis started and what's inside of the scope, which is what's coming from the input form. And also the settings ID device, which comes from the device itself from here. This guy here, he receives all this information. Let me close this, let me close this, and close this. Okay. I then check if we received all the data that we need. If we didn't, we receive a restore validation mentioning that the restore failed because it was missing form information. I then send another restore validation mentioning that it is currently restoring data with a warning color. And then I send the data restore itself here. So it uses the device ID, the file address, and I left I forgot the name of the other property, notification to the default, which is, I believe it's false. And then finally, I sent another variable mentioning that it successfully restored the data. So if I run this here and clear the console to make it easier to see, and add actually, let me remove the time interval since this is not actually used here. And also remove it here as well, since we don't actually use the time interval. This is a mistake of mine. Okay. So I'm going to name, oh, and also forgot to mention, back here in the analysis, file URL. Okay, never mind. Right, so I'm going to name it backup webinar example. And I'm going to back up from device 1. So I'm going to create that here. I'm not sure why it didn't show. Let me refresh my screen. Oh, sorry. Actually, I was mixing the analyses. Now I just now noticed that. Sorry. So actually, this uses the backup analysis. So, so now I'm actually gonna have to add that back here. So, 1 second. Backup time here. Calendar. Okay, save. Right, so, oh, right, this is used for the time, I believe, the name. That's why I use it in the analysis. Okay. Okay, so I explained the restore analysis. So now I'm going to explain the backup analysis. So in this case, it's very similar. So we check if the data is coming from a widget again. We get the information from the input form. We check if it received it, if it actually received it. We then let the user know that we're creating the backup. We sanitize the backup name so that we don't have any issues when we're creating the file. Because the path name has specific characters that you can't use. We format the input time, so that we can show it nicer here in the file address. We back up the data itself, so we give it the device address, the device ID, the file address, which is using this for now. So backups, the backup name that we're using here. Then the device ID, the one that we're using to create the backup. The sanitized backup name, along concatenated, along with the format time, and headers as true. After that, we then send the backup variable and the backup validation. This shows the validation inside the input form, and the backup variable shows the data here inside the backup list. So we're using a single variable to lower the data costs. So we're using the single backup variable along with the value being the backup name and 4 metadata properties, which is startup date, start date, end date, device ID, and the file URL. So if you come here into the dynamic table, and just to give an example, here we're using the backup variable and the formula, and the formula being metadata.device ID. So if you come back here to the analysis, device ID. So that's how that works. So let me go back here and create a backup. I'll close this and open this up, clear this console. So we'll be running this analysis. So it'll be showing here. Come here and write webinar example. And we'll use device 1 and 16th to the 19th backup. So as you can see, this is those validation variables so that the user knows what's happening in the analysis. So this is green because it's success. It was yellow before because of the warning option. So here inside the metadata, that's where you select this. It would be the type in this case and the color as well. So here I've created the backup. And here we have the backup variable that's now showing that the backup was created. And also just a tip here, the device the data was taken from so that the user knows exactly what this means. So now if I come here, let me first remove data from my second device so that we know that it actually, here, empty device data, empty device data, confirm, refresh. Okay. So now we're going to take the device that we want to send the data to and the file that we're going to be using. So webinar example. But before that, let me show you. So how does this show up here? We've just created this variable. So in that case, that's done by using the field type dropdown. And here inside of use values from, you select variable and select the device that you sent the data to. So if you come back here, we're sending the data to the settings device and the variable name is backup. So that's how that's being shown. And also here in the name, it shows the value. So that's why the name of the backup is being used as the value in this case. You can also add label, and then it will show that instead if necessary. Sometimes you need to do that. So if I were to write hello, instead of showing the value here at this dropdown, it will show hello instead. Okay, so let me go back and restore to device 2 and use this. So I'm gonna hit restore. So it restored the data. It sent a very, very quick warning that it was trying to restore it, and then it successfully restored it. So now if we go back to device 2, we see here that the data was restored. So let me quickly just, oh right, and we also have the third analysis. Let me go over that. Right, so this analysis is very quick. It just gets the file URL and then it deletes it using the files delete method. So that's basically everything. And it doesn't have a validate variable because you're not inside of an input form. You could create a notification if you'd like. So for example, if you click here to delete, it would show up here that the backup was deleted. That's an option if you need that. So just to keep that in mind. So let me quickly create templates here so that I can send this here in the chat. So that would be for the dashboard. And you'll need these 3 analyses as well. Update template, copy. I should have named that. Okay. Dashboard Restore analysis update. And the delete analysis. So in case you want to modify it, right? Yeah, that's everything you need. Just don't forget to create the policy as well. So just to show you guys this, so use those 3 analyses and select these rules. So access, send data, export data, import data, and file would be delete. And yeah, I believe that's everything. So thank you.
Cool. That's brilliant, Freddie. One thing that I thought about is a lot of people might be wondering, and sorry if you mentioned this already, but what I thought was, how would we keep this, for example, on a routine? I was thinking more in terms of the quantity of data, but let's forget that. Now let's think that every end of the month, I would wrap my data and I would put into files. I could use that analysis at a schedule method, right? So we could, at the end of each month, we could save and back up that data from particular devices, right?
Yeah, you could combine the you would have to change the analysis a little bit, just to add a way to get the device IDs that you'll like to create the backup from instead of using the input form, and use the scheduled action that you mentioned. Yep. And then decide when you want the backups to happen. So yeah.
Wonderful. Yeah, so that's good for those who want to, obviously, because I have a lot of questions for customer. Can I back up send to another database or send to my computer? When we do this, it's primarily stored on files, right? And from there, you can send it anywhere else. Yeah. And from files, we can also use it back into the application, right? So that's quite easy peasy. You can do all the processing from the platform. Well, I don't think I don't see any questions on the chat or Q&A. I think we can wrap up. I'm just going to give a couple seconds. If anyone has anything, please post it. Freddie added the links for dashboard templates and the 3 analyses that he used on his presentation here. I've also shared the link to our LinkedIn page. So if you want to stay tuned with previous events and ongoing events, future events that we're joining, we're going to be in Barcelona in May. If you want to meet us there, feel free to join. So you can find more on our events page, and stay tuned to future webinars. We look forward to bringing you more good content there. All right, Freddie, thanks a lot for your help. Appreciate it. Thanks everyone that joined, and have a great rest of the week.
Thank you.
All right. Bye-bye.